So if you're trying to run a homestead or a project like this, a meditation retreat in the forest, then you will know how invaluable equipment is, heavy machinery. And so if you have a mini excavator, that's going to make your life a lot easier. For example, we've got our first retreat coming up here in a couple of months. And if I've got to dig a latrine by myself with an iron bar, it's going to take most of the day and I'll be completely exhausted by the end of that. I mean, I'm getting pretty old as it is. However, with a mini excavator, I can do it in about half an hour. 7-foot pit, nice deep latrine, and that's going to accommodate everybody. And like that, there's so many jobs around here I can do. With the hydraulic thumb, I can pick up logs and move them around. And so when I don't have anyone here to help me, it's going to make my life a lot easier. So the question that came to my mind, and that many people think themselves, is shall I buy a cheaper Chinese mini excavator? Because the fact of the matter is, even if I want to buy a second-hand John Deere with the same spec as this, it's going to cost more than buying this one brand new by about 10 grand. And if I want to buy an equivalent machine new, like a Cat, John Deere, or one of the main brands, it's probably 2 or 3 times more expensive than something of a comparable power. So I did some research and I looked around and I found a company based in Vancouver, and they've been using the same Chinese factory for about a decade. So they've got a good relationship. And for example, the engine is a Kubota engine. I think many of these parts are standardized parts that get used on more expensive builds, but they're assembled in China. And there are some really, really cheap Chinese mini excavators. In the States, you can get them for as little as $5,000 US, I think. And many of these you can get at auction, but they don't have warranties. And sometimes the build is very questionable. So many people have got doubts. Should I invest in a Chinese mini excavator? So I did my research and I found this company in Vancouver called Bully Dog Equipment. And all the specs are basically better than the John Deere 17G in terms of power rating and the depth of the dig, for example. But like I say, it's almost 3 times cheaper. So I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to test it. I don't know how it will perform, but there's some general advice that everyone gives if you're going to buy a Chinese mini excavator, because their quality control isn't that good. Now, before I bought this one, I asked the firm in Vancouver if they did a pre-delivery inspection, right? A PDI, and they do. They test it quite thoroughly. And also, they've had a long relationship with the Chinese factory, so they don't have that many complaints. But there are some common things that go wrong. For example, sometimes in the Chinese build, and this isn't actually only for Chinese builds, this also happens with American machinery as well, that there will be little ferric shavings, like metal shavings in the sumps. And so the recommendation is, when you get it, is to change out all the oil. And also they say that in the Chinese factories, they put in kind of shipping oil. It's not really good quality. So the things that you're told you should do, one is to change out the hydraulic oil. And not only that, but to flush the system and put a magnet in the tank to take any ferric metals out of it, if there are any shavings. And the other thing is to change the engine oil. So I'm going to do both of those things today. And then once we've got this thing running, and we can do some testing and see how practical it actually is, how much work it can actually do. I mean, my plan isn't to kill the machine. I'm not using it commercially. I'm not going to be using it all day long every day, and the workers aren't going to be pushing it. We're going to use it slowly and gently. And so hopefully it'll last for many years. And not only that, if I do decide to sell it, if I take care of it, then the resale value is probably quite high as well. So first we're going to look at changing the hydraulic fluid, which is around on the right hand side on this machine, the tanks on the right hand side of the control cab, and the drain plugs on the bottom. So let's have a look. So it's directly underneath the tank, got a hydraulic line attached to it. I'm using a 3/4 inch socket, and then I put a drain pan on the track itself. The oil is supposed to be some kind of cheap soybean oil, so they say get rid of it and check it for metal shavings. Also, they recommend you put a magnet inside the tank. They say cow magnets, but these are the ones that I could find. They're non-corrosive. Don't put anything loose inside the oil sump because it could get stuck in the pump.
Make sure you put the rubber washer back on. Here there's a hydraulic line attached to the bottom of the sump, and that acts as the drain plug. So make sure it's all assembled back in the right order. And you should torque it to specification. I used a clean container to put a small amount of hydraulic fluid in, because it's difficult to lift the 5-gallon jug up to the filler. And make sure your funnel is clean. You don't want to introduce anything nasty into your hydraulic lines. The boom should really be down when you do this. That closes the cylinder on the boom and puts all of the fluid into the tank. And I believe when the blade's lifted, it's closed. As you fill it, make sure that it's not leaking. I use a bit of rag. This one has a sight gauge on the side so you can tell when it's full. They say you should fill it when the boom's down. I don't have the boom down here. The oil drain is at the bottom of the engine sump, and it's accessible underneath. They put some kind of packing oil in here. It's like recycled engine oil or something. This machine has 0 hours on it. It's already black. I intend to change the oil again once I've got about 80 hours on it. I'm not too worried at the moment. And I'm also putting some magnets in the oil sump. In order to fill it, you'll have to remove 2 wing nuts from the back of the seat and then tilt the seat up to expose the engine bay. The hydraulic fluid for this recommended is a 46 weight. I could find that easily. It's quite cheap if you buy it in a 5-gallon drum. And this oil is a 15W40. It's basically all I could get locally. So the engine oil's not leaking.
Look at the color of that oil. When do they say to change it? It must be recycled garbage.
Check the oil levels as you go along. Don't overfill the sump. And then we're ready to test it out.
So there's a couple of things they recommend you do before you use the machine. And one of them is to install a fire extinguisher. So I had to change the mount on this because the one that I had doesn't fit the fire extinguisher I bought. But it's fairly easy to pilot hole into the middle and then drill it into the frame. The other thing they say is that you should remove the plastic coverings from the seat, because basically the seat's going to rot if you leave that on. And the problem is the way they built this, it's actually stitched into the upholstery. We've got to kind of carefully cut it off and get rid of that. We kind of feel like we want to leave it on because it's going to protect the seat from the dirt and the grease and everything. But what they say is that's actually going to rot. So this is a diesel engine, Kubota diesel engine 902, and it's got glow plugs on it. So if you want to start it, you've got to heat up the glow plugs first. But it starts really well. So we've got a little key here. Make sure the battery isolator is off. And then go to the left 3 seconds. It should start up right away. Down here is a lockout control, so you won't be able to use it unless you took that on. Right, the first little job I've got for this mini excavator is to fill this hole here. I need to fill it because I need to get the excavator into the forest. I'm building a meditation hut over there, and I need to make some trenching for a waste pipe, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape away, burrow into this embankment, and then fill the hole with that soil. And that's going to test the power of the machine. I'll get a good idea of how the machine operates, but also it's going to be practice for me because I have very limited experience with one of these machines. And so if I do an easy job first, that'll be a good learning curve for me. So first we're going to burrow into the side of this embankment, fill this hole, and then we'll be able to drive the excavator into the forest. All right. I'll tell you what, the machine is a lot better than I am. I'm gonna have to work with it for a while and get some skill up on this thing. I'm sure that there's a way of doing it without being so jerky. But I think that's one of the traits of the cheaper machines, is the hydraulics themselves aren't that smooth and even. So I'm gonna keep working here, and I'll see you next time.